Thank you, Susan. And thank you all for participating in this forum, and the questions that we've had are really interesting. So typically we hear the debate of CO2 mitigation being a big cost. I'd like to present a different slant of the opportunity, and also like to acknowledge I'm part of a big centre, and the ideas here listed some of the people and the ideas have been developed collectively. So this diagram illustrates where some of the emerging markets today are already available for low carbon minerals and energy products. The map of the world, the colour scale, relates to the average solar energy resource, and you see Australia stands out as having a massive solar resource, and we also of course have got well known for our mineral and energy resources. In fact, 45% of Australia's exports are from minerals and energy. Of course, we know that the exports for things like coal are potentially under threat as they become less demand overseas. But in addition to that, that could be replaced by things like hydrogen, and I've listed some of them. Japan has got already looking for low-cost green hydrogen, as is Korea. Germany has got a hydrogen market. Norway and Canada has, I think, got a 20% premium at the moment on certified low-carbon aluminium, and likewise Norway. So these markets are going to grow as for example, the CO2 markets, but there's a higher value in trading. Companies like BMW would love to be able to sell carbon-free cars, certified low-carbon cars. So can Australia, if we can transform our mineral exports to be exporting not just iron ore but low-carbon steel, this is a massive opportunity for us as a country. The photograph on the bottom right you'll see is a certified low-carbon aluminium product, for example. Now, often when people talk about renewable energy, they really mean renewable electricity, and in fact the targets that Mike referred to earlier are for only dealing with the electricity sector. But his diagram, this is some global data which shows the same thing, that globally, the biggest contributor, this is the energy-related CO2 emissions, the biggest contributor is power, but it's only just over a third. If we're going to decarbonise energy, we need to decarbonise the whole lot. The next one here globally is transport, and Professor Daly is going to talk about this one. The light blue colour here is industry emissions. And you can see that as looking forward, this is some data from the International Energy Agency, you can see that looking forwards over the next 50 years, it's expected that power will decarbonise first. So 50 years out, the biggest contributor is expected to be industry. This industry sector is the one that, as in the first slide, is also Australia's opportunity, as is the fuels. Most of this is heat. So I won't go into the details because I've gone more slowly than I thought. But this slide is some data from McKinsey report, which I won't go into, but basically it shows you that in the industrial sector, we don't have technology commercially available. We can transform our electricity sector quite quickly, but you can't just go and transform steel making with commercially available technology. We have to develop it, so it's going to take longer. It's going to take at least 10 to 15, maybe 20 years, 10 years to at least to demonstrate it commercially and then to implement it because they're energy-intensive sectors. Is it happening? It is happening already. This is a project that the University of Adelaide is leading, looking at a target of introducing 50% solar thermal into the Bayer alumina process. Alumina is Australia's biggest value-added industry. This industry alone accounts for 40% of Australia's industrial greenhouse emissions, but it is also transforming because of this opportunity in low-carbon products. So, Closing, the key points I'd like to make is that energy-based CO2 is not only electricity, that's only about a third. We need to also consider industry and transport. We need a plan to mitigate CO2, therefore, not only in electricity, but in all of these sectors. And the industrial and transport sectors will take longer. The heavy industry sector is particularly challenging. It's a trade-exposed industry. The industry plants have got a very long life with low margins, so it needs to be given special consideration. And also the technology for it is largely pre-commercial, so we need to invest in it to allow us to capitalise on this opportunity, because these low CO2 markets are emerging. So decarbonising is not just a cost, it's an opportunity, but we do need to invest in it to be able to capitalise on it. But on the other hand, it may be easier to attract bipartisan political support if there's a market there. So that's perhaps the upside. And finally, we need to invest in this technology if we're going to capitalise on this early mover advantage. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you, Gus. I know how much work you do in so many other areas of finding solutions. It's unfair that everybody has only 5 minutes to talk about the amazing work that they do. The question you've chosen from the audience tonight is, what approaches can be used to remove CO2 from the atmosphere given the anticipated overshoot?
So the question is really important, because we know that the way the globe is currently decarbonising more slowly than what we really think we need to do to avoid the 2 degrees or 1.5 degrees target. So does that mean we're completely sunk? Well, obviously, a lot of people have been thinking about this for a long time, and there are solutions under development. I'm going to talk about a few of the technology-based pathways. One of them is around biomass, and biomass, of course, as it grows, takes CO2 out of the air. So even if it's burnt again, then it goes around in a loop. But if in this loop we're going to make something like a fuel, then we can add also some other renewable energy into the process and remove CO2. This CO2 could potentially be sequestered, and then this would give us a way to actually make a carbon negative technology. Another route is via something that might sound like fairy tales, but direct capture of CO2 from the air is actually a commercially available technology, and I'll show you some photos of that shortly. CO2 capture can be done from the air at not very much more cost than you can do it through from the back of a power station, for example, because the energy goes with the logarithm of the pressure difference, not with the actual pressure. So this then gives a way, that could be used to put the CO2 straight underground. However, to do that we need a carbon market, but that could be done. But it can also be used as a feedstock into fuels if you combine it with renewable hydrogen to make things like aircraft fuel, plastics, etc. Just to show you a couple of photographs of what's happening, this is one of the projects that we are working on here at the Centre for Energy Technologies. We're working on a process to combine things like bagasse in particular as a biomass source to make renewable synthetic diesel. We're estimating a cost at around $1 to $1.50 per litre. Now, if this wouldn't yet make a CO2 negative, but it could be potentially extended that the CO2 could be put underground to do so. The other one is some photos. This is the one I alluded to of direct air capture of CO2. This is a pilot scale plant which has been built. This process is made entirely of commercially proven components, but it's a novel system. And I can go into the details afterwards if you're interested. But it's been proven at pilot scale, and they've recently received about, I think, $68 million to build a commercial scale CO2 capture system. This technology itself is use fossil fuels to capture it, but the process is adaptable to run on solar thermal energy, and we're already working on some concepts to do that. So we think the market for this to occur, if you're going to put the CO2 underground, then at the moment there's no CO2 price, but there could still be some value in things like enhanced oil or gas recovery, which may make a market to drive it underground and get it going, and then as the costs come down, if a carbon CO2 tax or whatever comes available, then that could also be extended. So this is a large-scale technology that could be implemented at scale in principle to start to remove CO2 from the atmosphere. Thank you.